What if the most powerful move you can make isn't pushing harder, but accepting exactly where you are? Even when that feels like the opposite of progress. But sometimes life hits you hard and you have no choice but to stop. I'm Becky, and as somebody with an autoimmune condition and autism, I can suddenly get hit left field with things that just floor me. And whilst I've had management techniques to help me deal with this, the thing that I still find the hardest is acceptance. I had totally different ideas about what I was going to film today. Actually, not today, yesterday. And I'd been working on something totally different. And then I realized there's no way I'm going to be able to do this because I was completely bedbound, thanks to a chronic fatigue flare-up, which is part of my autoimmune condition. It's already kept me in bed for 2 days, but as you can see, I have made it out of bed. So because I find acceptance so hard, it's something I want to explore. Over the last few years, I've realized that accepting where you are and starting where you are can be one of the most powerful strategies. And today I want to show you, and maybe myself, why acceptance might just be the biggest power move you can make right now. So I'm here with a coffee and a question. Can acceptance really be a power move? So this is the second of the Coffee with Becky videos that I have made in this current era, and it's come off the back of all the work I've been doing around energy budgeting. I've been working really carefully to make sure that I don't overspend my energy, and hoping that that means that there's going to be less of an impact. But unfortunately, that doesn't mean there's not going to be any impact at all. When you're living with real life, when you're living with autoimmune conditions, when you're living with neurodivergence, with autism, you can still wake up some days and have a salary of 0. What are you meant to do then? You can balance your energy books as carefully as you like. But if your income's nothing, then you have nothing to spend on your dreams, on your goals, on your tasks, on just getting by. I find that really hard to accept. I find it scary because days out mean that you're not getting paid and you're also not working towards that future salary. I find it frustrating because I make plans, and as an autistic person, having processes, having plans, having systems is what keeps you going. If something comes in and stops that, you have to rebuild that momentum all over again. It feels like a constant uphill battle. So it doesn't matter how well you plan if your body is then just gonna say, no thank you, not today. It's a very humbling experience for sure. And it's something I've been experiencing for over 25 years. What I've learned is accepting where you are isn't defeat. It's actually just self-respect, and it allows you to make intentional choices from where you are instead of fantastical choices that are never going to work. And I'd love to be in that fantasy land where those dreams are all coming true, where you have the opportunity to work hard rather than being flawed. There's still little pieces in my mind that say, just get up, just do it. All that social media chatter that is like, just work harder. If you want something bad enough, you're gonna get it. I've had that mindset for too long. All that does is make the spiral downwards bigger. If you push when there is something that's saying you should stop, then the consequences can be immense. So even though I find it difficult, I know that the most courageous thing is to say no, is to say stop. I have a gymnastics competition in 2 weeks' time, and training was going so well. And then, bam, I'm bedbound. And I'm praying that it's going to be very, very short-lived. Just a little blip on the radar. But if I got up, if I tried to push, then the likelihood is it wouldn't be a blip on the radar. It would be a long, hard slog back to health. By working on my energy salary, my energy budgeting, it has made me be more mindful about how I spend my energy and how much energy I have in the first place. And it continuously reminds me what I have been told so many times and what I tell myself so many times and what I know about myself, which is when you look after your energy, everything else falls into place. So I have to trust, I have to believe that in a couple of weeks' time, I will be back in the gym. I will have a body that can do what it was doing this time last week, because I take the rest now, because I accept where I am, and I don't let myself get anxious about that, get stressed about that, as much as that feels like the natural thing to do. Now I want to talk about predictable versus unpredictable. My little autistic mind loves predictability, loves process. One of the reasons I've been able to show up so much for you on here recently is because I've got into a routine that's really, really working. And so there's that one part of me that is incredibly predictable. And I've noticed with autism that even though I've only just been diagnosed versus my autoimmune condition, which I've been living with for 25 years, in many ways it's been much, much easier to manage the autism because it's a lot more predictable. I know which situations, which scenarios are going to cause that overstimulation. I know what situations I'm going to struggle with, and I know when I'm likely to have a shutdown or a meltdown. But with the autoimmune condition, it's much, much harder to predict what's going to happen when. And it takes many different forms. So at the moment, I'm struggling with the fatigue side of it. Like I said, I'm hoping it's like a little blip, and the fact that I'm even up talking to you. Funnily enough, this is the first time I've actually spoken words for 2 days, so that's interesting. But sometimes it shows up like that, which is just debilitating fatigue. It's so hard to explain, and I know that those of you that suffer with chronic fatigue or with fatigue associated with different conditions, you know what I'm talking about. And I know for those of you who don't, it might feel so distant. I find that even when I'm not in fatigue, it's really hard to remember why I couldn't even get in the bath, why I had to, if I was going to walk from my kitchen to my bedroom, that took a lot of mustering, and I have to hold the walls and crawl in order to get there. It's so hard to explain. And I've tried many, many different ways. I said in my last video that it's like other people, if you haven't been to bed for 36 hours, that would be what it feels like to have chronic fatigue. I don't know, I don't think I've ever been not 36 hours for 3 days. I've never not been to bed for 3 days. I have done 36 hours when traveling, and that was nowhere near as bad as how this feels. So the only way I can describe it is, it's those moments when you're woken up in the night and you have that very initial 2 or 3 seconds when you're still basically asleep, but you're becoming aware. And at that time, it takes you a few more seconds to be able to even move your body or move around or say anything or become aware. Feeling like that all of the time for the entire day. And all you can actually muster is going to sleep. Lying on a sofa, lying on a bed, going to sleep. And so that unpredictability is something that I'm struggling with a lot. And so I have to have this acceptance conversation with myself every single time it comes around, because I'm living my life and I'm getting by, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm just about managing, and maybe this is part of it, but I'm just about managing to get by, to do all the things that I need to do in a week. I've got maybe a couple of things left on the to-do list, which I wasn't able to get done, but that's fine. And then it hits, and you're like, so everything that I felt like I just about had in order is not in order at all. And I think the real lesson here is about control. I'm being taught over and over again over decades of my life that the fallacy of control is just not real. Of course we have control over some things, but forcing your life to be predictable doesn't work. And again, there's the autistic side of me is like, no. So I have to have acceptance that I'm going to have these flare-ups, and acceptance there's going to be this lack of predictability, but also the acceptance that Things aren't going to be perfect. I'm not going to be able to show up in the way that I want to, exactly perfectly, going through the perfect process. And I have to accept that my ability to deal with the unpredictability is actually one of my strengths. I don't have to like it, but I can deal with it because I've had to for my entire adult life. And I think that this is a really important point when it comes to being powerful. A lot of people think that power is making everything predictable, forcing everything and everyone around you to be predictable. But that's not the real power at all, because the universe doesn't work in that uniform, held together way. Now, I'm a physics grad and we learn about something called entropy. That basically says that the universe is moving more and more and more towards more chaos. And what we do is we try and put systems and processes in place to maybe contain that chaos, trying to hold it together. But if that's what we're doing, it's not going to work. So trying to contain that chaos is merely acting against the laws of the universe. And actually what we need to learn to do is channel that chaos and flow with that chaos in the directions that we want to go. So as we move along, we adapt instead of breaking. I wanted to share with you some of the things that are on my personal acceptance list. And these feel like really, really tough truths to me. And they really go against a lot of what I have programmed into my mind in terms of what makes a successful person, what makes a person that you respect. So it really plays into identity, and I think that's why it can be so tough. And this is quite a long list, so buckle up. So I have to accept that there's going to be days that are filled with pain and filled with fatigue. That discomfort alone is something that I have to accept. I have to accept that that means saying no to things that I love to do. I have to say no to certain things that makes my life feel enjoyable. I have to accept that I have to modify things. I have to modify the tasks that I do. I have to modify my goals. I have to modify and let go of dreams. Sorry, I didn't expect this to be quite so difficult, because this acceptance, it goes really, really deep. And I do want to say, I totally understand that I have many, many privileges in my life as well, and that I can live a good life. Back to that list. I have to accept that I have to do a lot of selfish things. There's a lot of things where I cannot say yes to other people. I can't make myself available to other people whenever they need me. I can't do what others expect of me. I have to accept that my plans are going to go off track, and that that's going to lead to additional time pressures, additional stress. I have to accept that I've had to structure my life very differently, especially my working life, which makes it a lot more complicated. It makes it a lot more difficult. It means that I don't just get a salary and a pension, and I'm not looked after by a corporate. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think I would like to work for a corporate, but I do feel jealous sometimes of people who get to do that when I know I'm at my best, capable, but I just cannot commit as consistently as other people would be able to do in those kind of roles. So I've never even put myself up for them. Related to that, I have to accept that I earn less because I work less. So I think in the last video I told you I worked about 36 hours a week plus a couple of evenings, but currently I get paid to work 12 hours a week. So that 36 hours is majority doing things that are speculative, or doing things that I'm doing in order to try and help me build my career in my future and get income in the future. And similarly to the last point, I find this very difficult to accept, because there's a large part of me that thinks I do have a lot of skills that are valuable, and if I was able to show up more consistently, then I would be able to earn more money, and that would allow me to reach some of my financial goals. But as it is, I just plan for what do I need for my baseline income to get me by. And I know how lucky I am to be able to do that. And sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. The 12 hours is not enough to do that, but I earn more earlier in the year, so I'm okay at the moment. And I have to accept that I can't single-mindedly focus and march towards the goals that I have. And that's very uncomfortable to me. I feel much more natural when I'm working in a very focus-driven, rhythmic fashion. And to have to stop, my body forcing me to stop, is something that doesn't feel comfortable to me. And so even though I've shifted so that I don't work too much, I'm not pushing too much, I still have this unpredictability, because that's what these autoimmune conditions are. And the final acceptance is this need to constantly have to adapt and not have my brain able to settle into something. Just when I think I'm settling into a routine or structure, I'm pulled out of it. And that can be quite difficult for the autistic person that I am, having to constantly start again. It is one of the reasons I ended up going for my diagnosis. I had several things along the way, but one of the things was I was like, I'm having these burnouts, or I'm having flare up, but then mentally I really struggle with coming out of that. And what's going on? Why can I not get myself moving again? Why can I not get myself back into my routine, even if physically I'm feeling okay now? And that's largely because of that inertia piece. So with the autistic brain, if you're going already, and you increase your inertia, and then that leads you often to hyperfocus and to go. And then the opposite happens too. So when you stop, it's very, very hard to get things going again. You have zero inertia. And so that's something that I've also had to accept. All of those things, just looking at them at face value, you just think, none of that feels very powerful at all. That all sounds very weak, and it's undoing progress, which is why acceptance is really, really important to be able to create sustainable impact. Because if we want to have impact in this world, whether it's as individuals, whether it's as we're building a company or building your career, first and foremost, there has to be a degree of reality in that. So once I know all those things about myself, and I know those things to be true, that's when I can say, this is why you have to make very, very clear decisions on what you're going to prioritize. This is why when you are struggling, you have to be kind to yourself, because adding additional stress and additional pressure is only going to drain more energy. It's only going to take more time to get back to yourself. And it's probably going to lead to other self-sabotaging behaviors as well. So can acceptance be your biggest power move yet? If it's about facing those hard truths and grounding yourself in reality, then yes, it might well be. Perhaps you've been holding yourself back because you've been trying to push through things that actually need a softer touch. And we think that gaining power is all about pushing, optimizing, outperforming, but knowing when to pause is also powerful. And I discussed control earlier. Acceptance actually puts the control back in your hands, because you are in control of how you respond to situations. And by accepting a situation, you can then move through it, rather than just trying to drive towards unrealistic expectations. So acceptance isn't about giving up. It's about giving you the information, the knowledge, the awareness that allows you to set a strategy that's going to work for the long game. I didn't plan to make this video today. Based on some of the emotions it seems to have released, I think it has been powerful for me, and I hope that it also gives you food for thought. And I hope that if you're in a time of your life where you need to accept something difficult, then you can know that it's not a weakness, it's actually part of your own personal power, the kind that lasts. I would love to know one thing that you're trying to accept right now, and let me know how that's going in the comments. We're here to support each other. I'd also love to know any other topics you would like me to talk about in these cozy coffee with Becky videos, or in more of a deep dive video. I'm starting to not make sense anymore or be able to focus on the camera, so that's me done, and I hope you have a lovely day. I'll see you again soon. Bye.